Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're cracking open a seriously dark and frankly fascinating chapter of Indian folklore. We've got two completely terrifying interconnected tales that have survived for literally generations. These aren't just your run-of-the-mill campfire ghost stories. No, these are ancient tools of social control. They're cautionary tales that were specifically designed to alter the very fabric of village life and keep people in line. We're going to break down the whole shebang, the origins, the crazy escalations, and the absolutely wild resolutions of these legends. So get ready, because we are diving deep into the shadows today to dissect the anatomy of a curse.
I want a goat. I need blood. Okay, just imagine hearing those words. And not from some CGI horror movie villain, but from a young girl who, literally hours earlier, was just eating potato chat and riding a Ferris wheel at the local fair. This sudden, blood-chilling demand, spoken in this deep, completely unnatural voice, well, it marks the exact moment an ordinary family realizes a demonic entity has set up shop in their home. It sets a horrifyingly high-stakes vibe for everything we're about to cover.
All right, Chapter 1, The Witch's Cursed Mask. Let's dive right into this.
So our story actually kicks off with a teenager named Kajal heading to the local Baisakhi village fair. Now, in folklore, ignoring a parent's warning is pretty much step one on the express elevator to disaster. Honestly, it's how these cultures historically kept teenagers from wandering around at night. Kajal's dad, Ramesh, explicitly warns her. He brings up a recent, super horrific event where another local girl, Sunita, just a neighborhood away, was overtaken by a demonic spirit. It literally took a local mystic forcibly dragging the demon out of her to save her life. But, teenagers, Kajal totally brushes it off. She goes to the fair and just on a whim buys this ghastly mask from a really strange shopkeeper, thinking it'd be fun to scare her mom. But here's the chilling detail. The second she walks away and turns back, that shop and the shopkeeper have completely vanished into thin air.
And the moment Kajal puts that mask on, she isn't Kajal anymore. She freezes dead in the middle of the road, drops to her knees, and just starts chanting in this totally unknown language. What follows is a rapid, terrifying escalation. By midnight, she's talking in a masculine voice, demanding raw meat. She's throwing a grown man against a wall with superhuman strength. And get this, devouring raw goats in the bushes. Her dad actually manages to yank the mask off, and she temporarily goes back to normal. But unfortunately, the entity is definitely not done. Fast forward to 2 a.m. Her mom wakes up to find Kajal standing dead silent in the pitch-black storeroom, wearing the mask again. By 3 a.m., she is swinging a heavy axe at her own parents, literally screaming for their blood. They barely manage to lock her inside.
So, absolutely desperate, her dad runs to Tantric Veer Bala. This is the exact same mystic who saved the previous victim. The Tantric immediately knows what they're dealing with, a blood-drinking demon anchored to the mask. So they execute this highly dangerous, fast-paced exorcism. Step 1, they let her break through the wooden door from the inside. Step 2, the absolute split second she does, the Tantric violently throws sacred, enchanted ashes right at her. It's a spiritual purifier meant to blind the entity. And in that tiny window of weakness, for step 3, Ramesh lunges in and rips the mask right off her face. Kajal just collapses. The demon's grip is broken, and she's completely unaware of the absolute nightmare she just lived through.
The family is safe, right? Well, sure, but the object of power is still out there. The Tantric actually takes this cursed mask way out into the wilderness, digs a deep trench and buries it. He explicitly warns that if it's ever found, the consequences will be catastrophic. And of course, folklore absolutely thrives on the forbidden. Days later, a totally oblivious village girl named Pinky is washing clothes by the river. The sands shift, and she spots something buried in the mud. Yep, the cursed mask has returned to the surface. But while that curse waits to be fully awakened again, there's actually an entirely different nightmare already brewing in a neighboring region.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, The Village Terror. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it shows the sheer, oppressive fear governing this place. We're traveling to the isolated village of Midipur. If the first story was about an infected object, this one is all about environmental terror. Here, folklore practically dictates the sociology of the whole town. The rules are absolute. Women cannot leave the house, ever. Men must handle literally all outdoor chores, fetching water, hitting the market, the whole 9 yards. Why? Well, years ago, a pregnant woman arrived in the village. The villagers noticed her feet were facing backward, which, if you know folklore, is the universal red flag for a demonic entity or a witch. They violently banished her to the forest, and that deeply paranoid decision birthed a curse that still holds the entire village hostage today. So, the local legend states that the banished witch died in the forest, but not before giving birth to these horrifying twin demonic entities. And these twin witches possess a terrifyingly specific power. They can perfectly shapeshift into the form of any woman just by touching the crown of her head. Once they steal a woman's face, they use that innocent disguise to infiltrate homes and, you guessed it, drain the blood of men. That is exactly why the women of Mitipur are kept inside, to deny the witches their camouflage. But this incredibly fragile piece shatters when the village headman's grandkids, Priyanshut and Rosie, who are city kids, come to visit. Completely ignorant of the local rules, they sneak out at night just to look at the village well.
The witches, who are just waiting in the trees, immediately sense fresh prey. They ambush the siblings in the dark. Priyanshu narrowly escapes one of them, but the other witch successfully grabs Rosie, touches her head, and instantly steals her form. It's a truly horrifying deception. The real Rosie is dragged away and trapped in the forest under a dark spell, while the fake Rosie calmly walks back home with Priyanshu, completely undetected. And then, at 2 a.m., while the whole house is sleeping, this demonic entity wearing Rosie's face slips out into the village streets. She goes door to door, telling people her grandfather, the headman, sent her to deliver money. Because she looks like an innocent young woman, the men actually open their doors.
12. That is the exact number of men the fake Rosie managed to slaughter and drain of blood in a single, silent night of terror. Just let that sink in. By the time the sun rises over Mitipur, the entire village is plunged into absolute chaos and grief. So, the crucial point is how they fight back, leading us to Chapter 3, The Divine Trap. When the headman wakes up to this horror, he realizes the town's defenses have completely failed. Their worst historical nightmare literally walked right through their front doors. But there is a hidden clause in the ancient texts that offers a tiny glimmer of hope. See, normal men are completely powerless against the twin witches. They're essentially just food. However, the immortal demons can be destroyed by one specific type of mortal, a man naturally born with the sacred Om mark right across his back. In an absolute stroke of miraculous fate, Priyanshu happens to bear this exact super rare mark. This flips the script, turning Priyanshu from the kid who accidentally caused the problem into the only possible solution. But he can't just run out and fight them head on. He needs to outsmart a shapeshifter. And this brilliantly illustrates where folklore gets incredibly clever. Priyanshu devises a ridiculously daring, suspenseful trap. Step 1, he disguises himself in a woman's sari, fully covering his face with the fabric. Step 2, knowing the witches have to touch the top of their victim's head to shapeshift, he balances a sacred idol of Hanuman, who is the deity of ultimate protection and strength, securely under the fabric right on his head. And step 3, he walks out to the dark, isolated village well, sits down perfectly still, and acts as a living bait for the most dangerous predators in the forest. The tension here is just palpable. The remaining witches see what they assume is a lone woman drawing water. They descend, ready to steal a brand new face for another night of slaughter. They reach out and grab the top of Priyanshu's head. But instead of touching a human, their demonic hands clasp directly onto that hidden, sacred Hanuman idol. The divine energy reacts violently with the demonic entities. In an absolute instant, the trap is sprung. The witches literally spontaneously combust, burning away into piles of ash right there on the well's stone floor. With their death, the dark magic is instantly broken, and all the women they had trapped in the forest, including the real Rosie, are automatically freed and return home. So, the village of Mitipur is finally safe, and Kajal's family has found peace. The witches are nothing but ash in the wind, and the cursed mask is buried deep in the mud of a riverbank. But, as we saw earlier with the girl finding the mask, folklore never truly dies, does it? It just kind of waits. It waits for the next person to break the rules, to wander out a little too late, or to ignore the warnings of the past. It really makes you wonder, what terrifying ancient legends are buried in the history of your own town, just waiting to be uncovered? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And as always, stay curious.